Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take a trip back in time to one of the most fascinating, dangerous, and legendary places in Jamaica's history, Port Royal. This wasn't just a port. In the 1600s, Port Royal was known as the richest and wickedest city on earth. A place of pirates, fortune seekers, merchants, and danger at every corner. We're going to dive into how Port Royal rose to power, why it became the center of wealth and corruption, and how one catastrophic event almost wiped it off the map. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll see why Port Royal's story is one of the greatest in Caribbean history. Let's start at the beginning. In the 1650s, after the English took Jamaica from Spain, they needed a stronghold, a place to secure their navy, defend the island, and control trade in the Caribbean. They chose Port Royal, sitting right at the mouth of Kingston Harbor. Its location was perfect. Ships passing through the Caribbean almost had to go by Jamaica, and Port Royal became the checkpoint. But it wasn't just a military base. Very quickly, it turned into a commercial hub. Merchants set up shop, trade exploded, and money started flowing in. Within just a few decades, Port Royal was one of the wealthiest cities in the Americas. But with that wealth came something else: corruption, vice, and lawlessness. Port Royal wasn't just a trading city. It became a magnet for pirates and privateers, men who sailed the seas looking for treasure, often raiding Spanish ships and ports. The English actually encouraged this. They gave privateers like Henry Morgan official permission to attack Spanish fleets, as long as they shared some of the profit with the crown. And Henry Morgan, he became one of the most famous pirates of all time, operating right out of Port Royal. His raids made him rich, and in return, the city prospered. But here's the thing: pirates brought money, and with money came a reputation. Taverns, gambling houses, brothels, Port Royal became a city where almost anything went. By the 1660s, it had earned the nickname, the wickedest city on earth. Imagine streets full of gold, rum flowing freely, and lawmen who looked the other way as long as they got their share. That was everyday life in Port Royal. So what was it like living there? If you were wealthy, Port Royal was paradise. You could buy European luxuries, dress in fine clothes, and feast on imported foods. For many sailors, merchants, and adventurers, Port Royal was the ultimate reward after months at sea. But the city also had a dark side. Enslaved Africans were brought through Port Royal as part of the transatlantic slave trade. The wealth and luxury of the city came at a terrible human cost. Still, the image that stuck was one of excess. Stories of men spending fortunes in a single night, entire taverns roaring with music and laughter, and ships docking with treasures from across the Caribbean. It was exciting, it was dangerous, and it felt unstoppable. Until one day, everything changed. Before we get into the disaster that nearly destroyed Port Royal forever, if you're enjoying this deep dive into Jamaica's history, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments if you've ever visited Port Royal yourself, or if this is your first time hearing the story. Alright, let's get back into it. On June 7, 1692, disaster struck. At around 11:43 in the morning, a massive earthquake ripped through Jamaica. Buildings crumbled, the earth split open, and within minutes, 2/3 of Port Royal sank beneath the sea. Witnesses described houses sliding into the ocean, people swallowed up by the ground, and waves crashing over what had once been busy streets. Thousands of people were killed instantly. What's eerie is that for centuries afterward, divers could still see the outlines of the sunken city beneath the water, almost like a Caribbean Atlantis. The earthquake was seen by many as divine punishment. After all, Port Royal had built a reputation for sin and excess. And in just a few minutes, it was gone. Though survivors tried to rebuild, Port Royal never returned to its former glory. So what happened after the earthquake? Some parts of Port Royal were rebuilt, but it never regained its status as the Caribbean's leading port. Kingston, across the harbor, rose to take its place. Henry Morgan, the famous privateer, actually became lieutenant governor of Jamaica, a pirate-turned-official leader. But even his legacy couldn't restore Port Royal. Over the years, hurricanes, fires, and disease hit what remained of the city. Piece by piece, Port Royal faded into history. But its story didn't disappear. Today, Port Royal is remembered as one of the most fascinating places in Caribbean history. Archaeologists continue to study its sunken ruins, uncovering artifacts that tell us what life was like in its glory days. And for Jamaica, it's a reminder of both the heights of wealth and the consequences of excess. So there you have it, the story of Port Royal, Jamaica, from its rise as the richest city in the Caribbean, to its reputation as the wickedest city on earth, and finally its fall in the earthquake of 1692. It's a story of wealth, piracy, survival, and tragedy, and it remains one of the most dramatic chapters in Jamaican history. Now I want to hear from you. What part of Port Royal's story surprised you the most? Was it the pirates, the earthquake, or just how wild everyday life was back then? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into Jamaica's history, and share this video with someone who loves stories of the past. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.